We have an amazing guest today, Tom Steyer, someone who's lived many lives, all of them fascinating. Billionaire hedge fund manager, climate activist, author, and now climate investor. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Steve, it's great to see you again.
Oh, and presidential candidate. That's another thing, too. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
So we sat down about 5 years ago in the same building and did a podcast. And I took notes, so I'm going to hold you to everything you said. But I'm excited to have this updated interview because you had some big, wild ideas back in 2019. And obviously, so much has happened.
A lot has happened. I'm going to be interested to hear what they were to see if I was right.
So I'm excited that you're here to join us. You have a book coming out that is about your passion, climate change, climate innovation, and capitalism. Tell me a little bit about this.
Well, the book is called Cheaper, Faster, Better: How We Win the Climate Wars. And the basic point of the book is I'm trying to reframe how we think about this energy transition, because there are a couple widely held beliefs that I think are just wrong. One of them is that we can't get off fossil fuels. And it is true that we can't get off fossil fuels today. But it's not true that we can't get off fossil fuels over time. We're going to get off fossil fuels. We can do it, and we will do it. And the other one is that somehow in climate, we have a doom loop, that we're not going to be able to successfully combat it, that in fact, we're going to see almost unlimited human suffering, and therefore there's nothing you can do about it except despair. That's not true either. The truth is, this is a problem, it's a big problem, and it is susceptible to the exact same kind of structure of society and value system that has made America succeed, has made us the richest, freest country in the history of the world. We just need to do exactly what we've done in the past, using the exact same structures and attitudes, and we will in fact succeed in this transition and do something together that we can really be proud of, in addition to making a whole bunch of money.
See, I love your ideas because you come at it with hope. Because you look at the media, it's always saying, "Oh, the doomsday clock is now 1 second past midnight," and the doom loop. You come out with, you have an attitude of solutions and also market-based solutions. We're not waiting for some big brother, uncle, aunt to come in and solve this for us. The marketplace. So tell me, how do you see this laying out with the market? How is the market going to solve this? Because it hasn't for.
Well, let me be clear. Yeah. We are actually doing a whole lot better than people understand. So for instance, in 2023, last year that we have numbers for, of the new electricity generation worldwide, 86% of it was renewable. 86% was renewable. If you look at the cost of renewables versus fossil fuels in terms of producing electricity, they're much cheaper. People think for some reason that renewables are more expensive. Not true. The reason that 86% of new electricity generation was renewable is because it's a better deal. I mean, one of the things we have to get away from is the idea that people are going to be nice. People are not going to be nice. People are going to make decisions that make sense for them, and we shouldn't be mad about that. That's absolutely proper and right. So we have to have cheaper, faster, better solutions. One of my best friends, who I would describe as a conservative person, bought a Tesla like 5 years ago, and he loves cars. He's from California. He's always had a car since I've known him and loved having it and really cared about it. And he'd been driving European sports cars. And I said, "Matthew, what are you doing in a Tesla?" I mean, thinking, are you trying to save the world? And he goes, "Great pickup, Tom. I mean, it handles better than any sports car I've ever owned."
He's saying it's a better product that happens to be
Exactly.
greener.
He made a decision about what was better for him, not about how to save the planet. And the fact is, that's how we're going to win. People are going to make decisions and say, this is a better product. I need to do this. This is cheaper. So if my competitors do this and I don't do this, I'm going to lose. That's the way we change the world. Capitalism, profits, scale. Niceness, nice intentions, good intentions, don't scale, won't solve the problem.
No, it's going to come down to money and experience and better product. What you said that renewables are growing, they're cheaper, but if you read the headlines, people, there's all stories like, I'm from New Jersey, they just scrapped this whole $1 billion wind project. If you get something in the mail like, hey, you want to switch over to green energy, great, but it's going to cost you more. Obviously, EVs went through a huge jump, and now they're falling right now. Like, where is that kind of the the theme of alternatives are more expensive. Where is that coming from, and versus these realities?
Well, let's talk about those 2 points, which were wind off the shore of New Jersey and EVs. So let's first talk about wind. Let's face it, it's hard to get permits in the United States of America, even for offshore wind where no one owns the land. My 86% was worldwide. In fact, that is the case. In Vietnam, they had no renewables in 2018. They now have a higher percentage of renewable electricity than we do. Are they being nice? Heck no. They're getting a good deal. The truth is that most of the electricity generation that is going to be built and is being built is in China, India, Southeast Asia.
What can we learn from them?
Well, I think they're going to make very self-interested decisions, which is fine. And what needs to happen is they have to be able to buy things that are in their interest, that are cheap, that are a good deal. If that happens, then basically electricity generation in the world will move to renewables and clean. If in fact we don't succeed in that, then we're not going to be able to get off fossil fuels nearly fast enough. And let me just take one step back. This is all taking place in the context of a natural world. I think when people talk about business, there's an assumption that the world is static, that here we are and whatever the temperature is, whatever the storms are in Florida, whatever the heat index is in Arizona, is kind of where we are. Well, that's not true. The truth is we're in a natural world that is changing, that is probably changing faster than the scientists predicted, and where we can look and see, this isn't like predicting the market where it's uncertain. This is pretty easy to know. And so what we can see is, it's not like we should do this, we have to do this. And the question is, how we're gonna do it, how fast are we gonna do it? And that's somewhat a question of technology and costs, and it's somewhat a question of all of society response. Do we, as a society, put our shoulders to the wheel and get this done?
Is there do you see this happening gradually? Is a tipping point? Do we have to hit the rock bottom of climate? Because obviously we've been batting this drum for 30 years. Everywhere, whether it's scientists, activists, or corporations are trying to.
Well, there are two things going on. I mean, it's absolutely typical in new technologies to go through what's called the S-curve. So there's a time when you're not selling that much and you're trying to get better and your costs are going down and your competence is going up and you're competing with the existing technology. And when the cost curves cross, it kind of goes vertical and you get to about 80% and it flattens out. That's the normal technology transfer. We're seeing that. I mean, 86% is kind of vertical. The cost curves have crossed in terms of electricity generation. And that's really just the beginning, I think. In terms of EVs, and you were saying, look, I think EVs grew by over 30% worldwide last year. So it wasn't like it was slowed down. One of the things that and let's remember that the US is not the world. In the US, we drive big cars, long distances. In most of the world, they drive small cars, short distances. 99% of the people use their cars to commute. So when we think about it, we think of it in US context, where in fact, a lot of the EVs in the US, I think, grow 24 or 25% last year. The reason they didn't grow as much is people are now looking and saying, should I get a plug-in hybrid so I never have to worry about range anxiety? That's still a car where most of the time you're going to be driving on electricity. I think when you look at what's going on in terms of costs for EVs, there's a sense that they're very expensive. The costs for EVs have been going down $1,000 per month for the last 15, 18 months. Really. Yeah. If we keep going on that, there is about, I think it's a $10,000 electric vehicle in China. That's a disruptive technology.
Yeah, Tesla popped about 10% yesterday because they're
getting back
to the cheaper, low-cost one. Yeah.
So the truth is, do I believe that the technologies that we have in this energy transition are going to continue to improve and win? Absolutely. It's really a question of how fast.
What tech are you excited about? What tech do you see that's going to get so cheap that it's going to make all these renewables, replace everyone's gas?
I mean, first of all, this is, there's a cliche in the energy world, which is there's no silver bullet, it's silver buckshot. That there's so many different technologies in different parts of the economy, because this is really a change for almost all of the economy. But when we think about electricity and energy, to me, the remaining issue in energy, I mean, solar and wind are much cheaper than fossil fuels on a per kilowatt hour basis, much. What people now say in the fossil fuel industry is, okay, that's great, but they're not base load power. Basically, what do you do when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, which is true. And what's happened is batteries have also declined. I think solar and wind are down 90%, batteries are down 80%, and they're expected to go down another 80%. That's nice, but it doesn't deal with that question of intermittency. We believe that there will be a couple of revolutions in batteries, not just in cost, because it's already cheaper, but in the duration that they can store electricity. And when that happens, it's a complete change, because then you really, I think we'll be going to a couple of 2 to 3 days in 2 to 3 years, and then we're talking about weeks and months in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, you have a great battery.
It's now all of it.
The weather,
yes, out of it. We now have base load power. But there's other things that we're looking at in terms of base load power that are not fossil fuel driven that are happening. But my first point about silver buckshot is, one of the companies that I really love, which I talk about in my book, is a German company that's using sensors, machine learning, and AI to basically be able to real-time monitor how you make cement and concrete. And cement and concrete, believe it or not, are 8% of world emissions.
Yeah,
it's a huge number.
Huge CO2.
And actually just being able to real-time understand what that soup is and having it be the best possible soup is a huge cost saver. It pays for itself very, very fast. And in addition, you can save up to 50% of your emissions. So it's one of those things where if you sit there and look at it, you go, okay, this is going to pay for itself very fast. The EU is going to start to charge cement and concrete manufacturers for emissions. I'm going to be able to cut that in half. If I don't do this, and my competitors do this, they are going to undercut me, and I'm never going to sell any more cement and concrete. So it becomes not, you want businesses where it's have to have, not nice to have to have. And where you're thinking, this is really going to the heart of what I'm trying to do, and that's one.
You made your career in investing, especially analyzing risk reward. Mm-hmm. How do you take that mindset when you invest in climate technologies, companies, startups, all that?
Look, investing in effect is predicting the future. And in some cases, you get to affect it more in terms of how the process goes. But it's always looking forward and saying, what do I expect will happen? How do I avoid the disasters? How do I get into the good things and try and make the good things better? That's investing. Mm-hmm. So when I think about this, it's exactly the same. Some of this stuff, honestly, Steve, wondering what's going to happen to the natural world, there's a range of outcomes, but it's a range of outcomes. And the idea that the status quo is going to work, it doesn't make any sense. It can't. There's an old saying from, I think, the 1970s. If something can't go on forever, at some point it's going to stop. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing is, look, we're in the process of heating up this planet. It's physics. You can't get rid of the laws of physics. You can't fake the laws of physics. You can't politic your way around the laws of physics. It's just physics. Okay, well, let's have products that are better that solve that problem.
In your mind, if everything's better than the status quo out there, how do you make your picks to back companies back?
If everything's,
you said like the status quo is not working. So everything that's.
But we have to beat it. We can't assume. Well, let me say one thing. We don't assume policy changes. We think there will be policy changes. We think policy changes make sense. Mm-hmm. But basically, what we're saying is we want a company that is going to make money and scale because it's making money and solving a real pain point for people. And if that's true, then that's a company we want to back. And of course, you want to invest in, leadership's incredibly important. So you want to invest in companies with great leaders. But basically, you can look into the future and say, is this company going to win dominantly in the marketplace? And if it is, then that's a great opportunity. And if you think, okay, if the world proceeds the way we think it will proceed, and this is a big fat loser, you should stay away from it. Because if the rest of the world hasn't figured out it's a big fat loser yet, then either you never get into it or you can get out at a price that saves your bacon.
You believe capitalism is going to save the climate, but you're also been very politically active. You're progressive. What do you think about the Biden administration and their big push into climate change?
Well, let me step back for a second on capitalism. And I'm a capitalist, I'm an investor for my entire career. There is no such thing as a free market. I mean, there is a sense, people talk about it all the time in the press, and people in business talk about it, the free market. Every market has rules. I mean, I like to say, in the United States, it used to be legal to pay a 12-year-old 25 cents for a 14-hour day. Not legal anymore. We decided that's not good. Do I agree with that? Yeah. But the truth is, did people then hire 14-year-olds at 25 cents a day? Yes. So every market has rules. Even the most primitive markets have a rule about where it's going to be, who gets to set up their stall where, what the times of the market.
Yeah, it's a free market, but not a free-for-all.
No. And so governments set the rules under which, you can't poison people. Okay. That's not allowed. Did God say that, or did someone pass a law that says you can't poison people? Someone passed a law. So what we're seeing is, I think capitalism scales, but it scales within the context that government sets. And what I'm saying is, look, I can see a big market imperfection here, which is people are polluting for free. And at some point, I assume that will change. And actually, the Biden administration in the Inflation Recovery Act was trying to indirectly attack that and remedy that and make it a fair, a level playing field for people. My point is, we need to win no matter what. Like, I don't want to win, I don't want to lose saying, but if only the level playing field had existed, we would have won. Not interested. Our point is, we need to win. We need something that is absolutely better in the marketplace no matter what. And if the policy comes in to support it, fantastic. And if the policy doesn't come in to support it, we got to win anyway.
Well, how would you grade the Inflation Reduction Act?
I mean, it's by far the strongest attempt by any American government to address our climate issue. No question, it's a huge step forward. But the truth is, and it's also supposed to attract multiples of the government money into those businesses and into deploying those technologies and developing new technologies. So this is not a government thing, it's a government plus private sector thing. That's the only way that could possibly work. Do I think that will be enough? Look, there is a lot to be done, and the time is actually, this is not a limitless time issue. This is an issue where we can see the progression of what's happening in the natural world, and we need to move, and we need to win, and we need to win as fast as we possibly can. So I feel real urgency about this. I know the Biden administration has taken it seriously. They've done the best job ever. In a second term, is there more to be done? Sure. There's always going to be more to be done. And this is, as a friend of mine said at another friend of mine's memorial service, if you can complete your life's work during your life, think bigger. Well, I think the Biden administration, they're not going to complete their life's work during their administration.
I like that line. That's a good one.
Well, it's a nice way what it says is, we're all a link in the chain.
Yeah.
And this chain started in the United States somewhere in the 18th century. So anything we try and do to push us forward is really a continuation of what people have done for years and decades and centuries.
In talking about people, I think the individual feels powerless in this quest, because the average person, sure, you can walk as much as you want, not drive, recycle, but you're so minuscule what you're doing compared to the giant governments, the giant corporations, giant industries.
Yep.
What do you tell, you have children, what do you tell your children to be how can they make a individual impact? Again, not devoting their lives to it because they have to live their lives, but on a normal day, what do you kind of promote?
Well, let me say this before I answer that question. My kids and I, our whole family, went up to Alaska and saw it melting. And we made a decision as a family in 2006, we were going to address this. So actually, for 18 years, sitting around the kitchen table, we decided, oh my God, this is a huge issue. Maybe we can do something to help here.
But you also, you have the...
I'm lucky. I'm privileged enough to be able to take the time and go to Alaska and see it, and then be able to devote myself.
Yeah, and you can devote it, and you have influence, you have impact.
Yes, super. But let me say this. I see this as an all of society response. And in my book, I basically compare it to World War II. It's none of us could have won World War II either, for a fact. But everybody had to pitch in, and everybody did pitch in. and they took pride in it. It wasn't like people were like, oh my God, I have to go in the armed services. It was like, I have to go in the armed services or I'll be humiliated for the rest of my life. I mean, I need to pass the test that gets me into one of those services or I'll never be able to hold my head up. And that was a question of people said, we have a responsibility to each other. And so we're all gonna do it together. No one person could do that. And any one person's, anyone's attempt to grow a victory garden so that there would be more vegetables for the people at home so we could send more food overseas to the troops. No one's garden made a specific difference, but everybody's participation made a difference. So what I say to people is, you can think about how you run your life. You can think about what you drive. You can think about how you heat your house. You can think about what you eat. You can participate politically. We're not going to win unless elected officials understand you can't get elected unless you're willing to work on this. If you're not willing to support the war effort in 1942, if you think we should surrender, I'm not going to vote for you. There's no chance. And I think the third thing is this. Not everyone's going to be a climate activist. That's ridiculous. But if you're a banker, you can think about who you're loaning to. If you're an advertising person, you can think about what you're promoting. If you're somebody who works as an electrician, a construction worker, you can think about where you work. I mean, one of my favorite companies is an advanced geothermal company taking fracking technology from the oil and gas business, taking rigs from the oil and gas business, and taking workers from the oil and gas business to do clean geothermal way down in the earth. We're all going to get a chance to figure out what to do with our lives. We have more control than we give ourselves credit, and there are going to be an awful lot of jobs. If this transition happens, that has to happen, we're going to have a shortage of workers. So when we think about what we do with our lives, we're going to have a lot more control than people generally think, where people feel like it's a desperation situation. This is going to be a desperation situation for the people trying to fill up the workers to get done the transition that we're going to do.
You mentioned, the importance of politics and vote for people who are, for this fight, not against this fight. You ran for president in 2020 as a Democrat. What did you learn from that experience?
So the number one thing I learned running for president is how much I love the American people. It was so fun.
It was fun, it wasn't stressful, it was...
No. I always say to people, if you think running for president is so hard, try a real job one time. No. I think if you get a chance to talk seriously to Americans across the board, and regardless of whether they agree with you or not, if you're interested in America, then you're interested in Americans. And every American is the expert on their life. So if you want to know what it's like to be a nurse in Las Vegas, talk to a nurse in Las Vegas. It's very inspiring. If you want to understand any one of the people in this world, in this country, you have to listen to them. And if they'll tell you, I think you're so much, that I'm fascinated by. And people in this country are great. People love this country. They're patriotic. I always say, we are a loud and vulgar people, and thank God for that. We say what's on our mind. We argue about it. Our tradition is we solve it and we move on. And really, when I look at this country now, we're loud and vulgar people. It's great. That doesn't bug me in the least. It's a democracy. You get to disagree. What I found was, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, American people are fantastic. Very good-hearted, very warm, very generous, and very patriotic. I loved it.
Now, obviously, the whole theme is America is so divided right now.
It is.
Other sides aren't listening to each other. Did you see a different America on the road, or is that those divisions are still there? It's a communication, almost tribal thing at this point.
I think we're being, for a whole bunch of technological and political reasons, people are trying to drive people away from each other and to distrust and dislike each other. That's the truth. One of the reasons that I'm so optimistic and enthusiastic about the energy transition is it is all of society. It means we have to do it all together. When people are engaged in it together, they will recognize how good and how strong and how hardworking the other people in society that they had thought were, different from them actually are. And they'll realize, look, I love team sports. I always played team sports. That's the relationship I like, being a teamwork. When your teammate comes through for you, you forget everything else about him or her. That's all you can remember. And that's why I want to do this transition as all of society. Not Wall Street, not Silicon Valley, not Washington, D.C., all of America succeeding together. That's what I want. And that's the only way to do it. And I think that that is a real coming together for us, that let's remember how great, look, those people who you think are so different from you are 99% like you, and they're trying to preserve the country in their way. Okay, well, why don't we just do it together?
Are you considering office again?
No. Look, my job is to build a business investing in this transition as big as possible to make it happen as fast as possible and to get great returns. Because the only thing that, as I said, scales is profits. People need to know, this is the way we're going. This is what's profitable. Get on the train.
With, obviously, you're investing in startups all over the place. Technology is going to see our way through. You live in San Francisco, obviously the heart of so much tech. What are you seeing with AI and climate change, and what could it do? Because I have to ask about AI in every conversation.
Okay.
That's the thing.
It's, first of all, AI is going to be everywhere. It's really just the most recent revolution in information technology. In a long time ago, like 1996, I was talking to a friend of mine and I said, what about the internet companies? And he said, Tom, let me ask you a question. Are you an electric company? And I said, no. And he said, do you turn the lights on in the morning? I said, yes. He said, good. So stop talking about internet companies. Every company is going to be an internet company. Every company is going to be an AI company. Like Exxon's an internet company. I'm sure they've got a huge website and they do everything online.
Yep.
Yes, AI is going to be ubiquitous. So it's going to be something that really dominates the way we do business, just the way the internet did. It's also going to be a huge energy user.
Yes.
So we can see in terms of functionality how huge it's going to be and how much it's going to change things. But in terms of energy, it's one of the two major inputs to getting it done. And that's, we're talking about data centers going from 2% to 20% of electricity generated in the United States. Okay, how we do that is really important. And that we do it in a renewable way is really important. So AI is going to be dominant, and it's going to be, look, I'm optimistic about how this is going to turn out. Like all new technologies, it has, dangerous ramifications, like all new technologies. Yeah. And so the question is, can we control those while we enable the good parts of it to really,
especially with climate change, so much of it is, so much of AI is, there's so many types of AI, but there's pattern recognition, there's modeling, there's predictions. So much of that is what we're talking about with climate change, whether it's
can you do that? Like, can we get the one of the things that's, as an example, which I just love, we're going to have to be able to measure emissions, and we're going to have to be able to measure emissions from satellites, and we're going to be putting together numbers of data sets together to sort of interpolate and extrapolate to what the truth is, otherwise known as artificial intelligence. 5 different data sets to be able to accurately measure and verify emissions, including under the soil, where, by the way, satellites can't look. So that is all going to be possible. Our ability to measure things and to put them all into one big framework couldn't happen without it.
I have to ask a final question, because you were on the campaign trail in 2020. Any bold predictions for 2024?
Look, I'm not in the pundit business, thank God. I will say this. I always put my faith in the American people. I believe they make good decisions over time. The Winston Churchill famous quote, Americans always do the right thing after they try everything else. Yeah. Americans always come to the right thing. So do I know that it's going to be a very competitive race? I think we all know that. But I think that, I put my faith in the American people doing the right thing.
Perfect. Well, Tom Steyer, thank you so much for joining us today. We covered everything: politics, AI, investing, climate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Steve, it's great to see you again.